Okay, so what we're going to do in this class, as a Shashem, is we're going to be learning Tanya. But the Tanya we're learning, we're not going to be learning inside, word for word.
No.
We're going to be, the way we're going to do it, the way we're going to do it is we're going to learn the idea that Tanya teaches. And then we're going to look at a few words each time from each parak that expresses the idea that we're trying to convey. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Thank you. So we're not going to learn each word line by line, word by word, and translate. We're going to understand what Tanya is trying to do. And then when you get older, with Hashem, you'll learn from the inside, and hopefully you'll remember what we learned. You'll start to see everything we talked about in the words of Tanya. Okay? We'll get that in a second. So to start with, we're going to do an introduction. You can see on the page I wrote there 5 questions that we need to ask ourselves before we start learning Tanya. So as you can see, it says there, introduction, the ideological historical background to Tanya. Do you guys know what the word ideological means?
No.
The word ideological comes from ideas. So historical comes from history. So history is the discussion about past events. And ideology is the ideology is the study of ideas. Follow? Yeah, people study ideas. So, right, ideas and ways of thinking. So what we're learning today is what's the history of the ideas people were thinking that made the Alter Rebbe decide to write Tanya. What was going on? What was happening? What were people thinking? With me? Hello, you with me? With me? Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm sorry, I don't remember your first names. So here's what I'd like to do. Here is what I'd like to do. Here's what I'd like to do. Every week, we're gonna learn something about Tanya. And this is optional. It's not required. You don't have to do this. This is optional. Not the class. The class is mandatory. But what I'm about to tell you is optional. Namely, between now and next week, write down a 30-word paragraph. One paragraph with at least 30 words in it, very short, describing something that was important to you that you learned here. You don't have to do it. If you do, Hashem himself, next week, I intend to bring some candy of some sort. If you bring in so here's how it goes. What? Why candy is no good for you?
It's gonna
Behave. Okay, so we'll figure out something else. This is the plan. You're gonna bring some candy, and if you bring in a paper with 30-word paragraph, just for bringing it in, doesn't matter what you wrote. I'll give you one. If it has to be related to the Tanya that we're learning, somewhat related. Now, if at least somewhat related to something that we learned, if it's 30-word paragraph.
We're gonna get
If the handwriting is neat, a second one, and if the message you write in there is something that's really impressive to me, then a third one. So that's the challenge. So pay attention. Think of ideas that are important. Can you type it up on a computer? You can type it up on a computer, but I'm not going to give you that candy for handwriting though. So it'll be 2 and not 3. Okay? That's perfectly fine. Yeah. Sorry? Well, the idea I'm trying to encourage is practicing nice handwriting. So you're getting extra candy for writing nice. What? Just for the fun. Okay. Is that clear? Yes, exactly right. But it's optional. I'm not sorry. We'll figure it out. Okay. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
So let's begin. So you can see there's 5 questions there. 5 questions at the top there. You see it? Number 1 is, why was Hassidus revealed? And another way of asking the same question is, what was missing in Yiddishkeit before it was revealed? Yeah, so let me explain the question. How long ago was Matan Torah? 3,336, 35, right? How long ago was Hassidus revealed? So how many years is it from after Hashem gave the Torah until about 3,000 years? So exactly. So Yiddishkeit has been existing. Guys, pay attention.
Like 4,000.
Yiddishkeit has been in existence for about 3,000 years before the Baal Shem Tov taught Hassidus. So this is a very simple question. What was the point? What was wrong with Yiddishkeit before? What's missing? Why did Hassidus have to come on the scene? Sorry? Okay, good. So let's say the Beis Mikdash was destroyed how many years ago? 3,000 something. It's still about 1900. 1 second, we'll get there. 1,900. So you're still talking about 1,600 years before Hassidus comes around. Now, 1 second. You don't have to answer the question. You don't have to answer the question. We're going to answer it, but I want to, guys, your attention. The pasuk says.
Raise your hand.
The pasuk says, Hashem.
One for a question.
Hashem. Guys. Hashem. The pasuk says, Hashem does everything in its proper time, which means if Hassidus came onto the scene 300 years ago, it means something was going on 300 years ago that needed Hassidus. And before then, they didn't need Hassidus. And the question is what? Now, the truth is, you can ask this about every single Sefer. How many years between Matan Torah and the Gemara and the Mishnah? How many? Let's think about it. 1 second. Let's think about it. The Torah is given 3,335 years ago. The Mishnah is written when? About the same time this Midrash is destroyed, a little bit after. Which means for about 1,000 years, Yiddishkeit existed without a Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah need to come now? You have to ask that question. If you want to understand what the Mishnah is and what the point of the Mishnah is, you have to understand that question. The same thing with the Gemara and the same thing with Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. Every sefer you learn, if you want to understand it properly, you have to learn the ideological, historical background. What was going on? What were they thinking? What were the changes in life that required Hashem to allow this to be revealed? Is this clear? Is this 1 second before I get to the question? Is this clear? So this, the answer. We'll get to the answer. I want to explain the question first and why it's so important to understand the question. Did we get that? 1 second. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
Everybody with me?
Yes.
What's your name? Toby, you with me? Understand it? So every single sefer, that's an important sefer in Yiddishkeit, we have to understand this question. The ideological, historical background. What was going on in the world and the thinking of Torah that Hashem decided, you know what? Now is the time for the Mishnah to be written. Now it's time for the Gemara, and now it's time for Hassidus. That's question 1 we have to address. Question 2 is the same thing with Alter Rebbe. Hassidus Chabad. What, you want to say something? You want to answer the question? We're going to get there. The same thing is with Hassidus Chabad. The Alter Rebbe comes a little bit after Baal Shem Tov, and it starts a way of thinking called, a way of living and a way of thinking called Hassidus Chabad. Why? Whatever Hassidus did, why wasn't that good enough? Why did Alter Rebbe have to change his new movement called Chabad? We clear on the question? So then we have to ask ourselves, what? Well, Hassidus and Chabad. You have other Hassidus, not Chabad, right? The Alter Rebbe had other. Let's think about. Let's understand that. You're right. Let's understand that. The question now becomes: when the Alter Rebbe starts Hassidus Chabad, there are other Hasidic groups that start, and other Hasidic Rebbes that the Alter Rebbe's friends. You heard about many of them. Rabbi a lot of these different Rebbes, they also started their own Hasidic thinking. So what made Chabad different? Right? So obviously, there's something going on in the world of Torah thinking, the world of Hassidus thinking, and the Alter Rebbe says, this is the way to do it, and therefore I'm going to write Tanya, and others have a different way of thinking about it. Yes, please, guys, it's hard to do it, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. That's question number 4. Now, that's question number 3. Question number 4 is, why is Hassidus called Chabad? Why is Alter Rebbe calling is Hassidus Chabad? And another thing is, this idea that started Chabad is what we're called till today, which means those ideas, that whatever the Alter Rebbe's ideas were, that started this whole thing called Chabad, we have to be able to see it in how we live today. Even though it's 7 generations later, we start to see how the way Lubavitch and Chabad lives its life and Yiddishkeit is somehow founded and comes from the ideas Alter Rebbe expressed in Tanya and Chabad. You clear on what we're doing? Is everybody clear on this? Any questions anybody has? So far we're clear? So now we know what we're doing. This will take us a few weeks, but we'll get to that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the Baal Shem Tov. Because Baal Shem Tov started CHASSIDUS, and because it's really cool, I put in a picture there, a picture of the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, the first page. Can you see it? It's so your page is not colored, so you can. So you guys know about Baal Shem Tov Siddur? It's in the Rebbe's library. It's one of the most precious things that are there. So you can read the word there, yes? It's Shemona Esrei. Can you notice anything interesting there? What? It's a different nusach, because the Alter Rebbe's nusach wasn't there yet. We use Alter Rebbe's nusach, right? This is before the Alter Rebbe. He's using nusach Harizal. But if you look closely, let's say look at the left, under Baruch Atah Hashem Bani Yishalayim. Can you see there? What's the line under it, the black line there? Read it closely. Can you read it closely? Under Bani Yishalayim, what does it say? It's not in the regular block letters. It's in handwriting. What's it called? Cursive. How do you call it, script? Oh, you see that? What did you say, Tamach? Liyos l'zichron le'spalel Chesras bonim Moshe ben Penny Chan Bas. Oh, you know what that is? People would take the Baal Shem Tov Siddur and put their names in, so that when Baal Shem Tov would daven, he would see their names and daven for them. The entire Baal Shem Tov Siddur is full of this, especially about Shemona Esrei parts. I'm serious. It's very, very cool to see. You can go and see it online. There's a website called.
So it probably has like an exercise Siddur, like this.
Sorry? A lot of them, and some other random people. You can actually find. I found ones I was looking for before I printed this. I couldn't find it again, but I found Levi Tzikbarditchev's name in there. His name in the Siddur, which I think people write their names into the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, so he would see it and daven for them. So here it says someone who's missing children wrote his name. Remember me and daven I should have children, putting his name in. And all over you can see it. So if you look closely, it's hard to see the brown letters. Avur David ben Devora, maybe Ishtoi, something, Bas, something. You can look closely and see it all over. It's very, very, very cool.
It's missing base.
So the Rebbe's library, the Rebbe's library in New York took all the ksavim in the library. They scanned it, uploaded it online. So anybody in the world can go open and look at it. It's called ChabadLibrary.org. So Yuma Books has the Sfarim, doesn't have the Ksav Yadin, Kisv Yad Kodesh. The Sfarim, not the Ksav Yadin. The Ksav Yadin are on ChabadLibrary.org. You can look it up. It's very, very cool. We found, I showed Samach, we found original Kav Naki, which is written by our El Zayda. We found Kaitzim that Samach El Zayda collected Chassidus Sfarim with his name on it. You can find all kinds of fascinating things. You can search your family names. I'm sure some of you will find. I'm sure you'll find stuff there. It's very, very interesting. Ask your father to help you. ChabadLibrary.org. Anyway, so this is the Baal Shem Tov Siddur. Can we wait? What? Okay, so let's wait. Okay, so the next page, on page 2, you can see the Baal Shem Tov's oil and Mezhebush, the outside and the inside, and the bottom is a picture of Baal Shem Tov's shul in Mezhebush. Mezhebush is a small city in Ukraine, today Ukraine.
Is it like
So let's talk a little about Baal Shem Tov. Sorry?
it was a bomb down?
The shul? I don't know actually. That picture is an old picture, so I don't know what it looks like today. I think they re-renovated it, but at one point it was destroyed. I actually saw a picture online of the Baal Shem Tov's cave here before it was built fancy like this. It's very similar, but just a broken down, whatever. Anyway, okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the Baal Shem Tov and answer the question, what was the Baal Shem Tov trying to do with Hassidus? What happened in the world and why Hashem decided that it was this time for Hassidus to be revealed? So you want to give one answer quickly. What's your answer?
I don't think it's about it because people didn't have a life in the if anything happened to them, they're upset. They just fall. I just understood that. So someone completely came on the dragon told someone, you don't go to this, you can fall, you can completely
So that's Alter Rebbe. We'll get to that in a second. That's interesting. So let's get the Baal Shem Tov. What was missing? let's understand. First, there's many different answers in Hassidus and different places that ever discusses it. The Frierdiker Rebbe discusses it, why Hassidus revealed at that time. One of the ideas is, and actually one of the main ideas, which we'll get to soon, is the fact that it's a preparation for Mashiach's coming. All of Torah, right? Hashem gave a Torah for us to bring Mashiach, correct? That's the purpose, to make a din of time, right? So the way Hashem did it is that Hashem reveals His Torah slowly throughout history, preparing us for Mashiach's coming. Hello. Starting with Matan Torah, and then the Mishnah is another step getting closer to Mashiach coming. The Gemara is another step closer to Mashiach coming, and then Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, all these different Sfarim and all these different Gedolei Yisrael are all a slow preparation for Mashiach's coming, and Hassidus is part of that preparation. Not just part of, the most important and final step. That we will learn about soon. But first, let's get to the history, the other answer for why Hassidus was revealed at this time. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes that the Yidden were in a state of disalphus. They were like faint. Like, a person faints. So we know, you have a paper? Yeah. We know that when a person faints, the way to revive them is to whisper their name in their ear. You've heard that before?
No.
So this talks about this. When a person's like faint or sleepy, you whisper their name, you tell them their name, and it wakes them up.
Why?
What? Because the name is connected to the neshama. Real name, full name. I even saw a story where the Rebbe says a story that the Frierdiker Rebbe told a lady to whisper his name, the Rebbe's name, into her ear. Because the Rebbe's neshama is connected to everybody's neshama. So you whisper the name into their ear, that wakes up the neshama. What was Baal Shem Tov, the Frierdiker Rebbe's name? What was Baal Shem Tov's name? Yisrael. Yisrael means Yid. So it's like Hashem whispering the name Yisrael to wake up the Yidden who were faint at this time. Now, why were the Yidden faint? Why were they faint at that time? So let's explain. Holocaust is way later. This is way before. Holocaust is 70 years ago. This is 350 years ago about. So two major events happened about 100 or so years, a little more, about 100 years before the Baal Shem Tov came around. Two massive events that caused the Yidden to be in a very sad and depressed state. Number one is Tach V'Tat. What do you say? Earlier. Tach V'Tat. What's Tach V'Tat? Tach V'Tat are 2 years. Tav Ches and Tav Tes. Cossacks rebelled, and according to some numbers, 300,000 Yidden were killed. It was a horrible time. I'm going to explain a little bit how that happened, why that is. Yeah, what do you want to say? It depends how it's done, what you do. But let's wait. It's not so long. Half an hour. Thank you. So let me explain what Tach V'Tat is. A little bit. You guys like history? A little bit of story background? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's understand what the Tach V'Tat is. Tach V'Tat is like this. At the time, Ukraine and Poland are borders with each other. These two countries. Yeah. Now, sorry. Just wait a bit if you don't mind. Thank you. So these two countries, the borders of these countries move around a lot. It's not like today where countries stay where they are. There's constantly wars. I mean, there's war there now also, but it's constantly wars, and the borders change, and the countries change, and who's in charge, the king changes. Now, Yidden, in general, had this job. With me? Listen, this is very interesting. Yidden very often had this job called tax farming. You know what tax farming is? So let me explain. Today, we have computers. Everyone here has like a number, you have a social insurance number, and the government, your number in the government is that file. And when you go to the border, they know you left. And when you pay taxes, then you pay tax. When you move, they know you moved. When you buy a phone, that number is there. So that number is like a record keeping of who you are. Of who you are, right? But that didn't exist a couple hundred years ago. So how did they keep track of everybody and make sure that everybody's paying taxes and following orders? You know how they used to do it? By groups. So they would make a rule for all the people who are fishermen. You guys all share a certain group. It's called a guild. And if you want to be part of the fisherman group, you got to sign up with the fisherman group. And the fishermen have to pay a certain amount of taxes every year. So the government, the king, doesn't worry about every single individual fisherman. He's got to have one representative from the fisherman group, and that's how he's going to deal with it. And the same thing with every single group of people. And the same was true of Yidden. Yidden were grouped into one big group. Yidden. And the Yidden had to pay X amount of taxes. Now what that meant is the Yidden were allowed to what's called self-govern. They would live in their own little places. They called them ghettos. And the Rabbanim basically made the rules. They had a Rav, and they had a committee called the Zayin Tuvei Ir, the Kehila, community of people, like a board of directors who would make the rules. And they would say, okay, the king wants us to pay, I don't know, 100,000 kopecks in taxes. We think you could afford 10,000. You got to give 10,000. We think you could afford one. You give one. We think you could afford, right? And the king would just go to one representative from the Jewish community, and those representatives would take care of the rest of the community. So if there was a fight between Yidden, they didn't go to the police. They went to the Bezdin, to the Rav, because there's nobody else. They were in charge of their own community, taking care of themselves. That's right. And there were rules. What kind of business are you allowed to have, and what kind of business are you not allowed to have? And different times, different kings were nicer or meaner. Sometimes the king said, you're not allowed to go into these countries. You're only allowed to be in these places. And you're not allowed to do these business, this business, this business. Sometimes they said, you can only do this. Right? That's the way it was. Is that clear? Very different than the way we have it today, of course, because here in Canada, every person can do what they want. Didn't exist like that a couple hundred years ago. We clear? Yeah, we're going to ask. Hundreds of years in different places. Sometimes the government decides, you know what? The Jews, I don't like them, kick them out of town. The Jews go to another country. Sometimes that's way, way later. See, the ghetto, we think of the ghetto in the Holocaust, but the ghetto comes from way before, where Yidden lived in their own little communities inside of the bigger city, or their own city sometimes. Usually, actually, in earlier times, in the city, there was one quarter called the Jewish ghetto. If you go to France today, you can go visit the Jewish quarter. That used to be the Jewish ghetto. That's where the Jews lived for however many times they lived, how long they lived in France. It's called the Jewish quarter. It's not actually a quarter of the country. It's a little area in Paris. It's not so big. It's tiny, actually. A quarter means like section. It's a section, the Jewish section of Paris. You can see it in Prague, in Amsterdam, many countries and cities you'll find. Where's the Jewish quarter? Correct? Sorry? Yeah, they're not, well, anyway, they can live there now, but it's called the Old Jewish Quarter. And if you go there, you'll find the old shul there, maybe, if it wasn't bombed out by the Nazis. You'll find old Jewish things, a mikveh sometimes, or this or that. Yeah. Yeah. There is in Paris, there's in. So next time you go back, ask to go to the Jewish quarter, and you'll find there the shul that the Rebbe davened in when he lived in Paris. Zibitzin, right? 17? That's in the Jewish quarter. It's in the Jewish ghetto. Yeah, what do you want to say?
I went to a really old church.
Where? In which city? So that's probably in the Jewish quarter. Many places like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure if Amsterdam, I think you did. Okay, that's already a different problem because the whole Yerushalayim is Yiddish. This is the Yiddish. Okay, so now one of the job. What? There's yes, Venice has one. Rome has one. Has a Jewish quarter. Florence. There's a city I was in, so I know that happened. Where? In whose backyard? So, yeah, sometimes I think in Prague actually the shul has a jail in it because if the Rav decided someone was out of control, the government's not putting them in jail. We put them in jail. Yeah, so like in the shul you would have like a jail sometimes, like in the attic or the basement. Seriously, because they have to take care of the city. Nobody else took care of them. You have to take care of it. Could be you were there.
No.
The attic is where the girl is. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so what's the point here I'm trying to make? It's like this. Jews very often had a job called tax farming. And tax farming went like this. Collecting taxes from all the groups and bringing it to the king. So the king would tell the Yidden. So the Yidden would get the tax farming job because Yidden were very smart, good with numbers. They were very educated, good with numbers, good with writing, good with bookkeeping. So the king would go to the Jewish community and say, I want you guys to be in charge of collecting taxes. Now, I want this amount of money from that area. I want this amount of money from the fishermen, this amount of money from the shoemakers, and they get a whole list of how much they have to get. So let's say, what? Sorry.
But if the like.
Okay, so let me explain. So sometimes they got in trouble from the king because the king wasn't happy with how much they brought in, and sometimes they get in trouble from the people because it happens like this. If the government says we want $10,000 from that town, now the person who's collecting the money, the tax farmer, is allowed to charge $11,000 and keep the 1,000 for his own business. He's making a living, right? That's how he makes a business. And Yidden made money doing that. They used to collect farms. They were called tax farmers. They would collect taxes. Going far back as Rome, they used to do it. Yidden were good at this. Yidden were always asked to do tax farming, which means sometimes, first of all,
you could do it how much you want.
So if you went too much, the people would be angry. If you went too little, you didn't make enough money, the king was angry, right? So you were stuck in between the king. You have to be nice to the king and at the same time be nice to the people because either one of them be mad at you. So it's a very, very difficult position. There was a lot of money making, but it's a very difficult position to be in. You didn't have. And a lot of times you didn't got into trouble from people and from the kings because they did it wrong or even they didn't do it wrong. For example, in the Tachbatat Maisa, what happened there is the Kazakhs were mad at, I think the Poland was in charge then. They were mad at the Polish kings. And they wanted to start a riot against the Polish king. Now, the Polish king is somewhere out in Poland. And they want to be mad at the king. Who they can express their anger to? The guys who are collecting taxes on behalf of the Polish government. Who is that? Yidden. And they rioted against them. That's where Taklatat came from. Understand? Wait, wait, 1 second. You want to ask something? Oh, sorry, yeah. Well, the king will go to tax collector. The king will go to tax collector and say, if you don't give me taxes, I'm throwing you in jail and your whole community. There's such a thing as an individual yid. If a yid messes up, the whole community's messed up. So if you have, which is a serious job, people used to have, they're called shtadla and the different names they had, yidden who were like close to the king, and they would present the king, they would present the Jewish people to the king. And if that guy messed up, the whole Jewish community was thrown out of town or thrown out of the country, whatever. It was very scary. Yeah. Different times, different things. But this is how it happened. The Cossacks were rebelling against the Polish kings, and the Jews were the representatives, and therefore they went around. Oh, so that's the first thing that happened. Now, when this happened, it was a massive rebellion. It's called the Khmelnytsky Rebellion. You see, for Ukrainians, Khmelnytsky, this guy who ran this pogroms, he's a hero in Ukraine because he was a guy who threw out the Polish government. But for Yidden, he's the worst guy because when he threw out the Polish government, he killed Yidden who weren't at no fault. They were just put in a position to represent the Polish government. So what do? They're stuck. They get killed. That's what happened to, according to some numbers, hundreds of thousands of Yidden. So you're talking about a huge portion of land where lots of Yidden are living, where houses destroyed, families destroyed, people killed. That's the first thing that caused the Yidden to be in a state of depression. This depression is physical. It's their livelihood, it's their family, it's their homes, their communities. But then there was another event that happened a little bit after Taklatat, which caused what? Which caused a spiritual depression. What was that? Anyone?
I don't know, but you know where I can get the cup.
Go wait a few minutes. That's a lot.
What?
Yeah. What was the other event? There you go. So after disaster, now you're understanding. Whenever there's a big thing that happens in Yiddishkeit, it's because something was going on. So the Holocaust happened. Hashem had to send the Rebbe and say, we got to fix up Yiddishkeit when the place is beat up. So same thing here. Hashem sends the Rosh Hashem to bring the Yidden back. And I'm going to explain how. But what's the spiritual event that caused Yidden to be depressed? This is the physical event. The Holocaust is after that. Way after that. I'm going to explain. Yes. Shabtai Tzvi. Yes. Thank you very much. What? Before the problem comes? Well, the Rebbe came after. After the Holocaust, the Rebbe started to. I don't know how Hashem operates. Okay, so now the Baal Shem Tov. Now the second event. The first event that caused Yidden to be depressed is physical event of the Khmelnytsky rebellion. The years Tachatat, Tavches, Tavtes. The next event, is the event of Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi, very quickly, was a person who seemed a little bit eccentric. You know what eccentric means? He's a little bit like extreme. Like,
So he's a bad guy.
okay, so he was a very bad person. Let's explain. Let me explain. He's a little bit, yeah? Is it okay? Can you wait till 12:30? Or yeah, thank you. So, no, let me explain. So he was a little bit crazy. He probably had some mental illness of some sort. We're not really sure exactly. He might have had something like that. And he was also very charming. He used to sing very well. He spoke very well. He looked very good. He was a very charming person. And he declared himself as the Mashiach. He said he's the Mashiach. And for whatever reason, he became very, very popular. Hundreds and thousands of Yidden followed him thinking he was Mashiach. And many of them even sold their living in wherever. Shabtai Tzvi lived in Turkey. In Greece. In Greece. And yeah, I'll get to the second 1 second. So he was using Kabbalah, he was teaching Kabbalah and talking about how Mashiach's coming and he's the Mashiach and explaining all kinds of things and going from city to city, getting people to follow him. And people so far as miles and miles away from him, Yidden, sold their houses and moved to where he was because they thought Mashiach's coming. That's it. We're moving to Israel. So now this Shabtai Tzvi goes to the king of Turkey, and the king of Turkey was in charge of Israel at the time. I'm making the story very simple, but he made a lot of money. Yes.
The guy probably as much as a lot of houses made.
That yes, there were people taking taking advantage of Yidden. It was a very bad time. But Yidden thought Mashiach's coming, that's it. Or at least a lot of them did. Many Rabbanim even followed him. Other Rabbanim understood something's off, but some Rabbanim actually followed him. Thousands and thousands of Yidden. Rabbanim, thousands of Yidden. And yeah, even Rabbanim. You'll see when it changed. It's not like almost changed. So many Yidden go to him. So he's Mashiach, right? He's a little bit crazy in his head. He like lives in a fantasy land. He thinks he's amazing. He like really believes himself. It seems like he actually even believed himself that he's Mashiach. He used to walk on the street singing Tehillim. I mean, like crazy stuff like that. He married a Torah once, like wacko stuff. A Torah. You sure? Yeah. Made a chuppah. Married. I mean, like crazy stuff like that. But people thought, wow, Mashiach is marrying a Torah. It's amazing. Crazy. And sometimes you use Hashem Mefurish. When you use Hashem Mefurish, actually, some of the Rabbanim in his town said this guy's bad as soon as you use Hashem Mefurish. But doing crazy things like that. But some people thought he was, wow, Mashiach's coming. What? So, no, meaning he pronounced Hashem's name, not Aleph Dal Yud, but he pronounced Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei properly. I have no idea. Anyway, I mean, Meshuggah, obviously. So he went to the king of Turkey at the time, the Sultan, and because the Sultan's in charge of Eretz Yisrael at the time, and says, I'm the Mashiach of the Jews, please give me Eretz Yisrael. I'm in charge. I'm the king of the Jews. I'm Mashiach. I'm the king of the Jews. And the king of Tyre says, actually what we're going to do is, you're going to go in jail now. You put him in jail. But it was more like a hotel kind of jail. We had like advisors there with food and people. I think he even checked the Korban Pesach in this jail and like crazy stuff like that. Totally wacko stuff. But Eden were falling for it, unfortunately. So what happened was, the king eventually told him, listen here, buddy, this Mashiach business, not happening. Here are your choices. Either you convert to Islam, become a Muslim, or I'm going to kill you. And what did he do? He converted to Islam.
He's so stupid.
The moment he did that, most Yidden said, okay, this has gone too far, we're out. But imagine how depressed they are. They put their whole hopes and life and everything into this Mashiach coming, and it was a complete bust. The guy converted to Islam, became a Muslim. He was a total fake, a total fraud. And they lost their homes, their families, their communities. Communities were torn apart. It was a disaster. People felt mamish depressed. And what's even worse is that even after he converted to becoming a Muslim, he convinced people that this is part of the process of Mashiach coming. You know why? Because Mashiach has to go to the deepest Tumah and elevate the Kedusha, and that's why I'm going into Islam and Meshuggah, stuff like that. But what happened was that many Yidden actually kept on believing in him. Secretly. Yep. Secretly kept on believing in him. For almost 100 years after he died, there were still Yidden secretly believing in him. No, they didn't do those kinds. They did other crazy stuff, not like that. What? Okay, so 100 years later is a little bit before Baal Shem Tov. A little bit before Baal Shem Tov. 100 years later, a little bit before Baal Shem Tov. And secretly believing in him. He died, but he's going to come back, and it's part of the process. He's died. All kinds of crazy ideas they come up with. Yeah? What do you want to say? Yeah, obviously, I'm sure they took him to a hospital because Nebuch, the guy's crazy, right? Whatever this guy is. Okay, so, but now what happened was there was a Yid. His name was, I'm not gonna get the whole story right now, but there's a Yid named.
Last year.
Yeah.
The last year, someone came to Yeshiva.
Yeah, all kinds of Nebuch.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Yeah. So a Yid named a Rav. You want to ask something? Well, it's 15 minutes. Come on. So there was a Yid named Rabbi Yakov Ben See, who was a Rav, who was known as Yaakov Emdin, also known as Yavitz. Him and his father, the Chacham Tzvi, Rabbi Tzvi Ashkenazi, the chief Rav of Amsterdam, they made it their mission to get rid of Shabtai Tzvi belief, and they were successful. They got rid of Shabtai Tzvi belief, but to do that by all kinds of making letters and proving them wrong and publishing papers. Sometimes they were attacking other Rabbanim. If Rabbi Emden believed that a Rav was secretly Shabtai Tzvi, he would publish letters against them and publish books against them and rip them apart, and all kinds of fights happened there, and the entire Yiddish community split over this. And a lot of the strong Rabbanish leadership started to fall apart. after this event. Now, this is right around the time of Baal Shem Tov. So what happens now is the Yidden, who were from Yidden, who were new Torah and mitzvahs, people are depressed. There's a bunch of these simple people running after Shabbat Tzvi or who knows what, all kinds of stuff, beliefs. They decided, you know what?
Wait, the Shabbat Tzvi, the Shabbat Tzvi.
It doesn't seem like he did any miracles.
No, but did he like, when he trying to explain people so that he and Mashiach could like use a Shabbat?
Yeah.
Like, no, he's not.
Sometimes he sounded name with Hashem's name. I mean, crazy stuff. Anyway, so because of all this, what happened? Sorry? We say? He did all kinds of wacky things with his signature. Sometimes he put Hashem's name into his signature. Crazy stuff. He signed his name Ben David, Mashiach Ben David, crazy stuff like that. Anyway, so sometimes he said that also. You want something funny to do? You know what he used to do sometimes? He said he kicked up the Melech. He used to do sometimes. He used to tell people, "I'm Mashiach, right? So I'm going to be in charge of the whole world. So if you give me $1,000, I'll make you in charge of Turkey." And people would pay him. Okay, well, Mashiach comes, I'm going to be in charge of Turkey. Like crazy things. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so all to say like this. So by the time Hashem comes around, Yidden are in a very depressed state. They just had a disaster spiritually, a disaster physically, and the Frum Yidden who are learning Gemara and learning Torah, what? Yeah, selling countries. Yeah. Anyway, so exactly. So
these guys by Mashiach make us say they're very
yeah, exactly. So Yidden were very depressed spiritually and physically, and what happened is the Yidden who were educated, who understood Gemara and Torah, they said like this: in order for Yiddishkeit to survive, we have to tighten it up. We have to go into our own little circles and keep our Torah together. Don't share it with anybody else. And we just stay together in the yeshivas. We'll learn. We have the money, and we're going to save Yiddishkeit. All the rest of the simple people who don't understand anything, whatever, that's who they are. We're leaving them alone. We're not interested in taking care of them. Because taking care of them just causes disasters. And then what happened was a bigger and bigger split came around. You had Yidden who were wealthy and smart in Gemara and Halacha and Medrash, even Kabbalah, some of them, most of them. And then the rest of the Yidden who were simple Yidden, poor, depressed, didn't even know how to read Aleph Beis. And what did the Baal Shem Tov come and say? Those Yidden are precious. That's why the Baal Shem Tov had to come at this time. He came and said, guys, just because you weren't educated doesn't mean you're a bad Yid. Hashem loves you. And when you say Baruch Hashem, Hashem is so excited. And when you say a bracha with your whole heart, Hashem is happier with you than even the greatest Talmid Chacham. Right? This is Baal Shem Tov came and said. What's the most famous story you know about Baal Shem Tov? What do you say? So some people said, this is another Shabbat Tzvi, we got to stop him. Some friggin' said, this is going to be a new guy. He's going to say his Mashiach. He's going to ruin Yiddishkeit again. We got to stop him now. Now you understand where the Misnagdim are coming from. They weren't just bad people. The Misnagdim were scared. This is another Shabbat Tzvi going to ruin Yiddishkeit again. We can't let this happen. Sorry? They had a reason. He's going around telling people that they're amazing. This sounds, and he's using Kabbalah also. This sounds like Shabbat Tzvi. That's what the Misnagdim were against him. They were scared that this is going to be another disaster. Understand? But that's what he's. You're right. So we understand that, but now you can understand where the Misnagdim are coming from. You understand? This is what they're thinking. Why did they Misnagdim? This is the reason why they're Misnagdim, because they were scared for another disaster. Now you understand. So now, what? It's different. But that's why it was then. Now explain. Now, what's the most famous story you know of Baal Shem Tov? What's the most famous story you know of Baal Shem Tov? Most famous story. I'm going to say it in 2 ways. You know it, yeah? The most famous Baal Shem Tov story that you know of. Yeah? No, come on, no? That's a famous one. When I say this story, you're going to know. Kukuriku. You guys know the Kukuriku story? Okay, the story is the Baal Shem Tov is davening on Yom Kippur, and his face is red. He's schwitzing. He's saying Tehillim. He's not letting them start Kol Nidre yet. All the Talmidim are like, there must be a Gzeira and Shemayim, so the Talmidim are davening with him. There's a simple Yid in the background, a farmer who wants to join the davening, doesn't know how to, so what does he scream? Kukuriku. And the Baal Shem Tov says, this guy's screaming Kukuriku with his whole heart. He say the decree. Now 1 second. Imagine this. The God was this Yid a bad Yid?
No.
Was he intentionally not from?
No.
No. He didn't know how to read. He doesn't even know how to say Shema Yisrael. All he can say is cook-a-doodle-doo. Could you imagine how uneducated that kid is? Right? But could you imagine how uneducated this Nebuch, this kid is? That he doesn't even know how to read Hebrew. He's just saying cock-a-doodle-doo. He can't even say Shema Yisrael. That's all he can do is a farm sound. And this is the Baal Shem Tov's hero. Now you understand the Misnagdim. The Misnagdim look at him and say, hold on a second. So I'm learning Torah all day. I know Shas, Balpeh, and Bavli, and Yerushalmi, and Medrash, and this and that. And I can't stop Gzeira Malamayla. A little kid who can't read Hebrew, he's going to this guy's going to stop the Gzeira?
Because he was doing it, but he wanted to die, but he couldn't.
I'm doing it for real.
He did.
I'm schwitzing all day for Torah. Come on.
He's doing it.
You're right. I understand you. That he's doing it from his heart. Right? But the Misnagdim say they're doing it from the heart.
They're doing it for
See,
themselves.
now you understand why there's a little bit of a Misnagdim. And now you understand why the Baal Shem Tov had to come at this time. Because Yidden were slowly getting disinterested in Yiddishkeit, didn't know anything. They felt, and every time one of these big Misnagdim would come to town, they would tell them, you guys are going to Gehenna because you don't know how to daven, you don't know how to learn. And the Baal Shem Tov comes and says, no, Hashem loves you. He lifts up their spirit. Making them feel good about being Yidden. Making people feel happy and excited. Obviously, shows the main thing. Right. When you give tzedakah to someone else, the Baal Shem Tov said, that's the biggest mitzvah you can possibly do. Right? Inspiration. That's exactly what he did. He came inspiration. He would go, you guys know the stories. He would go from town to town and tell people, how are you? And the guy would say, Baruch Hashem. And the Baal Shem Tov would say, you say Baruch Hashem, this light up the heavens. Right? You've heard these stories.
Another story about.
But now you understand why these stories are here. Sorry? That's right, because he stopped him. Why are you taking my Hashem Parnasa? Right, that story? Because now you understand these stories. The Baal Shem Tov is trying to remind you, guys, stop getting stuck in your own head about how amazing you are with your Gemara because you're trying to save Yiddishkeit. There's Yidden out there. You got to love them all. You have to give, there's a neshama, there's Abbas Yisrael. If a person does it with sincerity, it's most important.
You have to be happy because you have a career.
Now you understand.
And you might be happy when everybody else.
That's right. They should have that's the way to save Yiddishkeit. Learn Torah, make big yeshivas, keep everybody away from it. Don't let simple people ruin our Yiddishkeit with their weird ideas. We're going to keep Torah like this. And the Baal Shem Tov said, oh, there's neshamis, there's Abbas Yisrael, there's a sincere connection to Hashem. You have to make sure every Yid is happy. This is what the Baal Shem Tov says. So this is why the Baal Shem Tov came at this particular time to bring life back to the Yidden. And he was very successful. Before the Baal Shem Tov passed away, by the time the Maggid came around, the Maggid and the Baal Shem Tov took over the Baal Shem Tov. By the time he came around, there was already hundreds of followers of Hassidus, and many even Talmidei Chachamim became followers of the Maggid and Mezritch, because they saw, guys, we're getting a little out of hand here with our thinking we're amazing and learning Torah. We're forgetting about the Eden. So even Talmidei Chachamim came along to this Hasidic idea, right? So now we have the answer to the first question: why was Hassidus revealed? Because Yidden were depressed, and Hashem sent the Baal Shem Tov to bring back life. What was missing in Yiddishkeit? Nothing was missing in Yiddishkeit. But the people were in a horrible place. So Hashem had to reveal a new level of Yiddishkeit to bring life and excitement and joy back to Yiddishkeit. Yeah.
The whole hour just to learn one question.
That's right. So now I want to tell you, we're going to leave you with this, the question for next week. Okay? The question now becomes like this. So in order to scream Kukuriku, if I went to Yom Kippur this year and I screamed Kukuriku, would it end in Gzeira?
No.
No. So it only works if you're simple and not educated. If you, so that's the question. How do I get that simple, real kavana that this kid says when he says kukuriku? How do I get that in my Modan? That's a big shaila now. And that's the question that the next generation of Hassidus have to answer. We're going to look at the answer next week, but yes. So what do you do? So what do you do? So this kid says kukuriku doesn't know anything. And what do? I know how to read. I learned Gemara. But I also want to have that connection to Hashem. How do I do it? It's ruined. So thanks to my education, my relationship to Hashem is ruined now?
No.
So what are we going to do? No education for anybody so everybody can scream kukuruku? They don't do, that's a terrible idea, right? Yeah. That's a good answer. And we're going to look more about that next week. But this is the big shaila. This is the big question for next week.
We get
After the Baal Shem Tov passed away, and the Maggid, the Mezritch Rebbe, and he has hundreds of Talmidim, some of which are massive Gedolim. The Alter Rebbe wrote a Shulchan Aruch. His fellow Talmidim of the Maggid were major Talmidei Chachamim. They couldn't scream Kukuriku. So how do they go and spread Hassidus and tell people, you know what? You need to get a connection to Hashem that's so pure. And I look at him and say, but I know how to read. I have questions. I know how to learn. So how do I get the same chayus and the same simcha that the Baal Shem Tov brought out in the simple yid? How does someone who's not so simple get that? Because I can't scream kukuriku. That's not going to work for me. You understand the question?
Yep.
To answer this question, you have the Alter Rebbe had his view, and the other Hassidus, what we call Chagas, have their answer. We're going to explain next week. There was two different answers to this question, and that's what makes Chabad Hassidus different than the rest. So remember, next week, if you give me a paragraph, 30 words, one paragraph of something that you learned today that was that was important to you, just for bringing it in. Candy, if your handwriting is neat, second one, and if the idea is, then someone will give you a high five. And if what you write is nice, then an extra one. Guys, thank you for your attention. Looking forward to next week.
Where is this going to?
Going to Emphasis YouTube channel.
Emphasis what?
YouTube channel.